Welcome. My name is Nate Converse. I am a farm business management instructor up by Little Falls, Minnesota. Work with a lot of dairies up in the Morrison County region, and I do have some statewide responsibilities to help with some of the statewide livestock data and dairy data. Today in this presentation, we're going to go through the livestock enterprise information that will include dairy. We're going to look at profitability, sorting by profitability and by herd size. We'll also talk a little bit about the beef, both cow-calf and finishing, and the hog enterprises. The data we're going to present today is located in these two reports. They're both located on the AgCentric website. I'll show you the address here next, but the Farm Business Management 2019 annual reports, there's one for the northern part of the state and also one for the southern part, along with a few regional reports as well. Both of these can be downloaded at agcentric.org. Once you get to that website, you have to scroll down until you see the 2019 annual reports button, and then you can click on that, and within there you can locate all of them, including the dairy sorts and the other sorts. So the dairy enterprise information, we're going to start there. The dairy data on slides prior to the dairy herd by herd size here does not include organic production. So we just pull that out to make things a little bit more uniform, but that's just a little disclaimer there as far as what the production or what the data includes. First thing we're going to look at is number of dairy cows on the average farm. This data goes from 2010 up to 2019, so it shows a 10-year trend report. And obviously herd size have been increasing pretty steadily over those past 10 years, starting with about 140 cows back in 2010, and almost 100 more than that here in 2019 at 235 for the average herd size. One other note up in the corner here, you'll see this says page 56. If you're using the Northern report, this would locate the page number that this data would be available on. So just as a note throughout the presentation, you will see that. Milk production per cow. So another one with some interesting trends here. Obviously 2010, our lowest year in the past 10 years at 22,028. Kind of reached the peak here in 2017 at 24,830. And average milk production did drop in 2018, but then came back a little bit here in 2019 to 24,390. Now we'll take a look at production and net returns per cow. This is before owner-operator labor and management, so that's what this term means up here. So it would include hired labor or paid labor, but not the owner-operator labor. And this trend here, this blue line just shows our milk per cow. And then if we go in, we can also show our returns. And obviously 2014 was kind of the banner year for the dairy industry. Average returns per cow, just under $1,250 per cow. Again, this is before owner-operator labor and management. 2018, the lowest out of the past 10, because this does drop out 2009. And then last year, a little bit closer to that average, maybe slightly above average at 403 net return per cow. Looking at our 20-year trend, this does pull in the 2009 data, obviously, and that's kind of our record low year at a $210 loss per cow. And obviously, you see a lot of variability in this chart. 2018 also showed a loss, and then last year, like mentioned in the previous slide, about $403 a cow profit. If we look at returns per hundredweight of milk before labor and management here, this pulls that data down to a per hundredweight basis. So again, shows a similar trend, but $5.26 in 2014, 16-cent loss in 2018, $1.65 here in 2019. Looking at the average price on milk sold, this excludes organic, so this would just be conventional dairy. Shows our trend, and this is a price received by the farm, not class 3. This is actual prices received by farm. Last year was $18.64. That's up considerably from 2018 at $16.44. Looking at our cost and gross margin per hundredweight on the dairy enterprise. Down here we'll split. So this is the average, and then this is kind of that mid-range group, the farms that are right in the middle based on profitability. And then we have our high profitability farms here. So looking at our feed costs, you can see some pretty big differences between our average and our high group. Our average is at $8.24 per hundred. The high group comes in at $7.75. And if we add in all of our direct costs, so that would include vet, breeding, supplies, fuel and oil, repairs, and the feed, our average group comes in at $13.22, and the high profitability group comes in at $11.73. So we can see that cost savings continues. Then as we factor in the direct and overhead, so overhead also includes depreciation, interest on mortgage payments, real estate taxes, and utilities. So 1572 for average, and comes all the way down to 1487 for the high return group. And then obviously when we look at our gross margin includes milk sales, adds in the value of coal sales and bull calf sales if a dairy happen to have those. And then we'll subtract the value or the cost of the dairy heifer replacement enterprise. So the average comes in at $17.38 per hundred, and the high group considerably higher than that at $18.14. So if we look at our net returns, average was $1.65 per hundred. The mid group came in at about $1.78, and then the high group $3.26. If we factor that labor and management in there, that's factoring for the owner operator labor. It's 95 cents up to $2.50 for the high return group. Now taking a look at the 3-year view. So this would show data from 2017 through 2019. As you can see, feed costs have been steadily increasing here over the past 3 years. We go from $8.06 in 2018 up to $8.24 in 2019. If we add our direct costs in, follows a fairly similar path of increasing cost. And then as we factor in our direct and overhead, again, we go from $15.45 in 2018 up to $15.72 in 2019. But our gross margin, we're going to see a lot of difference up here, primarily due to the increase in milk price in 2019. So if we look at our net returns, $1.38 per hundred in 2017, 16-cent loss in 18, $1.65 in 19, and that trend kind of follows as we factor the labor and management cost in there. So 95 cents in 2019, pretty significant improvement over the 87-cent loss in 2018. Dairy cows on a return per cow basis. So again, we're looking at the average, the mid group, and the high group, and this will be based off of 2019 data. So the net return is $233 per cow on average after labor and management. Net over our direct and overheads, $403 a cow. Net after just our direct costs is $1,015, and gross margin on average last year was $4,238. The mid-range group comes in pretty similar to that, slightly higher on a few of these measures. And then our high group obviously showed quite a bit more return on a per cow basis, $662 per cow. Net after direct and overhead, $865, $1,698 after direct cost, and gross margin a fair amount higher at $4,809. Giving a 3-year view, so 2017 had our net at $156 per cow, $349 after direct and overhead, $920 after overhead, and gross margin of $4,123. 2018, we know we had a loss in there, so we show that $209 loss after labor and management, $38 loss after direct and overhead, gross margin $36.67. And then 2019, a little bit more of an average year, $233 and gross margin $4,238. So significant improvement over 2018. So next, we'll be looking at the beef cow-calf enterprise. We have a few slides on this enterprise. The first thing we want to take a look at is beef cow-calf returns. This is net return per cow. And again, this is a 10-year slide. So it shows 2010 all the way through 2019. And really here for the past 4 years, we've shown pretty substantial losses on the beef cow-calf enterprise. Prior to that, we had some variability. Obviously, kind of our banner year here in 2014, but a little bit more average at between $50 and $100 a cow prior to that. 2019 came in at $223 loss per beef cow return. Looking at our cost and returns of production per cow, again, we're looking at the average and then that mid-range group and then the high profitability group. So average feed cost was just under $470. That mid-range was $481, and the high group about $110 less than our average at $359. So substantial savings in terms of feed costs for our high return group. And that factors through when we add our direct costs in there. Average at 646, mid-range. Total direct costs, again, this includes feed, breeding, vet, supplies, repairs, all of those direct expenses that you would not have if you didn't have cows. So average is 646, and then the high return group is $491 per cow. Direct and overhead, $828 down to $648 on our high return group. And then our gross margin would include calf sales, the value of calves transferred if you kept them and moved them to a finishing enterprise, cull sales, and then subtracts out any inventory changes, or the value if you purchased any heifers to bring into the operation. So the average is $605 per cow, but our high return group came in at $787 per cow. If we look at our net returns, average, again, a loss of $223. If we add labor management in there, that would show a loss of $310 per cow. The high group actually showed a profit of $139 per cow, and even after labor management, they still showed a profit of $67. Looking at just a few select factors, there are some different data points that we can pull within the database. And this shows our 3-year trend. So we're looking at 2017, 2018, and 2019. And really, I present this slide just to kind of show some of the differences of what makes some of these high return farms a little bit more profitable than the average. You can see, obviously, the net return is a big one. As we'd expect, the 3-year average net return is a loss of $100 or $98.79. But the high 20% shows a 3-year average net return of $204 per cow. So pretty significant difference there. When we look at herd size, we see some variability, but nothing that's really statistically significant. The average herd size is about 76 cows. The high return group actually shows a slightly smaller than that at 63 cows. Some of our big factors when we look at calving percentage on average is 93%, where the high return group shows it just under 97%. Then if we add in our weaning percentage, 85% of the calves on average are weaned, where in the high return group, 93% of those calves actually get weaned. So that's one of our major significant differences in this sort here. Cows per FTE, this just measures the labor efficiency. So more labor efficient would show us more cows per FTE. Average is 307 compared to 340 on our high group. Average weaning weight, pretty standard or pretty equal between the two, 538 pounds per cow compared to 550. So slightly heavier in our high return group, but not a major difference. The big difference comes in pounds weaned per exposed female. So on average, there's 461 pounds of calves weaned per cow exposed. High return group is 512 pounds. Again, this is a major factor here when we look at the weaning percentage being that much higher. That gives us a much higher pounds weaned per exposed female, even though our average weaning weight's pretty similar. Feed cost per cow, again, pretty significant. On our 3-year average, looking at our average herds, $429 per cow compared to $350 per cow in our high return group. So that's quite a difference between those two. Average weight of beef calves sold, within 8 pounds between the two, so not a major difference on that. And average price, actually our average profitability herds showed a slightly higher price than our high profitability herds. So again, the major factors come back to savings in feed costs and more pounds calf weaned per cow exposed. Looking at our costs and returns of production per cow, this would show our average, and this is based by herd size. So we'd have up to 50 cow herd size, 50 to 100 cow, and 100 to 200. So feed average is 469, actually lowest in our mid-size group at 50 to 100 cows, and highest in our small herds, and 501 in our larger herds. If we look at our direct costs, those kind of follow through. The average is 646. Our mid-size herds came in the lowest on direct cost at 554, and then 706 for larger herds. Direct and overhead, pretty substantial differences here. Average was $828 per cow. The mid-size herds were 714 compared to 944 and 910 for the small and the larger herds. Gross margin, 605 was the average. Up to 50 cows came in at 603, 505 for that mid-sized group, and 639 for the larger groups. So when we look at our net returns, the average is actually negative 233. If we factor our labor management in down below, that's negative 310. And kind of our mid-sized herds actually did the best at negative 286 and 209. This slide takes a look at the beef cow calf enterprise with and without backgrounding. So we have some herds that choose to wean those calves and background them for a month or two before they sell them to add a little bit more weight. So this just shows the profitability differences between those two sorts. Feed costs, as you'd expect, with backgrounding increases a little bit, but not as much as you might think. If we had our direct costs in there, actually pretty consistent between those two at 646 and 647. Direct and overhead gets a little bit cheaper on this with backgrounding group compared to the without. And gross margin, pretty substantial difference between 605 and 797. So on average, a beef cow showed negative 223 without backgrounding. If we keep those calves and retain them for a little period of time, it actually shows some profitability at $22 a cow profit. Looking at beef and dairy finishing enterprise information in the next few slides here. As you can see, dairy finishing price was up per hundredweight slightly in 2019. Net returns down about 24 cents. So you can see our trend line on price. 2015, kind of a record year here at 135.5 per 100 pounds. And we trended down for the past couple of years, slightly up from 2018 in terms of our price received per hundredweight. But if we look at our net return, still pretty marginal on a per hundredweight basis, but slightly down from 2018. 2017 actually would have been our banner year in terms of net return. Beef finishing returns, net return per hundredweight, again, just shows our net return from 2010 through 2019. Showed a slight profit here in 2019, certainly not as good as 2014 or 2017, but compared to some losses here in previous years of 15, 16, and 2018, a little bit of improvement in that term. If we look at our beef finishing average weight sold, as you can see, pretty consistently here over the past few years, we've been finishing beef steers a little bit heavier weight. Last year was 1384, 1417 in 2018, but quite a bit up from 1302 back here in 2010. Now on to the hog enterprise, just a few slides on hogs. The red line up here on top shows price received per hundredweight of carcass. The blue line shows price per hundredweight live, and then this green shows our net return. So net return up in 2019 as compared to 2018. Price slightly up if we're looking at live weight. And price is also up a little bit if we're looking at price received on a carcass weight basis. Weaning to finish hogs, net return and price again. So price received per hundredweight of carcass is up on that red bar. Blue line shows price per 100-pound live weight, and that kind of green there shows net return per head. So this would show our average, kind of that mid-range, and then our high return group. Again, price isn't majorly different between average and our high return group, but we are showing a fair amount more profitability in the high return group. Thank you for watching our 2019 data for livestock. Again, my name is Nate Converse, Farm Business Management up by Little Falls, Minnesota with Central Lakes College.